is in any doubt about the validity of evolutionary theory is a gross distortion of the reality. And I think the media has failed miserably in doing their own investigations to understand the strength of evidence and the weight, the force of thinking behind the evolutionary position. So I'm most concerned from your viewpoint because you are, especially your generation, is surrounded by 24-hour news channels. This is very different than the environment we grew up in, where it was a one-half-hour news broadcast on 2 or 3 channels an evening. A lot more people read newspapers 25 years ago than read them now. And so you get this constant barrage of presentation of controversy, of conflict, of polarized viewpoints, whether they're about this issue or whether they're about other political issues. And that I think that's resulted in a gross distortion that, in part, one of the reasons for the holiday lectures is to try to bring at least the grounding back to what the scientific evidence says. What does the scientific process tell us about the reality of evolution? So my general comments are going to be, or my questions I'm going to try to lob out, have to do with the way you've been presented issues, the way you've been presented the balance or imbalance between issues, and some of your perceptions about what people think. So the first question I want to put to you, again, I don't mean to pick on Father Wiseman, not at all. In fact, maybe should I explain a little bit about my background? I went to a Catholic high school. I learned evolution from an ordained priest. I best understand the Roman Catholic position because that was the environment I was brought up in. So I'm taking advantage of that, a little bit of that understanding to say, how many of you that belong to different denominations than Roman Catholic, raised in a different denomination, find what Father Wiseman said surprising? And would any of you care to share why you find it surprising? Right there on the bench, yeah.
I think it's surprising because from the way I was brought up, I think I was taught to take the Bible a lot more literally, maybe not verbatim, but a lot more literally than what Father Wiseman was saying.
Sure, right here.
Ask you what you think is the main reason that there's so many Americans that have an issue with evolution. Do you think it's fear or our start as a Puritan group of colonies, or what is it, something else?
I think you wanted that one, didn't you?
Well, yes. I think look, I'm an evolutionist, and I think the answer to the present is in the past. And I would want to say it's obviously a major part, a function of your distinctive history. That this was a religious nation. It was founded by religious people who came to these shores either because they wanted to practice their own religion, or more particularly, they didn't want to be the victims of other people's religion, and these sorts of things. I think that after the Revolution, particularly, Americans were looking for guidance. How do you live your life? And they no longer had the mores, the traditions of the old world to support them. And so at this point in the 19th century, if you like, the preachers, the Billy Grahams of the day, moved in. And the Bible became very much a basis for daily living, much more, I think, much more so even than the 18th or the 17th centuries. Now, complicating this fact is the Civil War, and particularly after the Civil War, in the South and as one moved west, the Bible became more and more almost what shall I call it, a kind of a cultural thing as well as a religious thing, because the Bible was, one of the things the Bible tells us is that God often afflicts those that he loves most. And people read it this way. People in the South and elsewhere said, terrible things are happening to us, but that's okay. It doesn't mean to say that God's abandoned us. It means perhaps he expects us to labor on in these ways. And so, to a great extent, I see the Bible and literalism as bound up culturally. And I think it's true today. I honestly don't think that the intelligent design people or the literalists are lying awake worrying about spots on butterflies' wings. I truly don't think that they're lying awake saying, oh my God, toolbox genes, it's going to blast our theology all to hell.
I'd like to respond to whether people should be scared of people like Sean and I. I think not. I think that, again, Sean said you can choose to ignore facts or not, but the facts continue to exist. And I'd like to point out that it's not that the facts are all scary, right? the facts of evolution and the way evolution works really is critical to everybody, including all sorts of medical issues as well. So the same people who may be afraid to hear about how genes work, I think will be very glad to know when they're being treated with antibiotics for an infection, or when they might unfortunately get a tumor, and the tumor is trying to evolve to spread throughout the body. Those sorts of genetic events that geneticists study, like geneticists at the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, like our colleagues, this understanding of how mutations occur in cells and organisms, change them, allow them to have competitive advantages for infections to spread, for tumors to spread. This is the same kind of understanding that's absolutely critical to the treatments that are going to apply to most of the people in the world, including the people who may be afraid of the information that's coming from genetics.
I'm going to add one more. We're going to get back to your question. But I find it beyond ironic that juries condemn people to death or free convicted prisoners on DNA evidence the theory underpinning that very test is a central piece of evolutionary theory about genetic variation, about mutation, about the statistics of random events, etc. And so society right now depends on DNA evidence for questions of life and death. Yet the DNA record of natural history and evolution, we're not willing to contemplate it? Unimaginable. How can we have that happen? Go ahead.
I just have two questions. The first one's really short. For the two scientists, do you two believe in God? And secondly, how do you reconcile your belief in God with what you do in science? And do they work together? And have you seen that they work together, or are they like polar opposites?
Your call.
I don't see a fundamental conflict between religion and evolution. I think, I tried to say this morning, I think evolution is a description of how life changes. It's different than addressing where the whole universe came from, why there's something instead of nothing. Darwin says nothing about why the universe exists at all. And I think that there's still a place, and a critically important place, the why question of how the whole universe came to be, that isn't addressed by evolutionary theory. It's a false conflict to say that believing in evolution means that you have to believe that the universe came from nothing. I don't see the conflict, and it's baffling to me that so many people do.
So my personal concern really centers around, as I said before, the denial of evolution. I won't actually in public discuss what my religious views are. It's a decision I made a long time ago, because I think some people have made this comment before. There was a time when you didn't discuss who you voted for, how much money you made, and what church you went to. And the divisiveness that I think exists in our culture today has come from the breakdown of some of that, I think, good common sense politeness. So I'm not going to answer that direct part of the question. But I want to make clear, I think from the scientific point of view, just echoing what David said, the scientific community's stake in this discussion is all about the denial of evolution and the disregarding the scientific process. We have to understand that our standard of living, David's talking about medicine, hygiene, etc., the technology we have, these are the dividends paid by a scientifically literate culture, or at least a partially literate culture. I think it's very dangerous for us to say there's an entire body of knowledge that is inconvenient or offensive to us, and we're going to ignore that. What you believe beyond the realm of science, and I think scientists have to be very honest about where those boundaries are, what you believe beyond that is really part of the freedom we have as individuals, and especially the freedom we have in this country. So I think when scientists feel that their body of knowledge has been disregarded and infringed by the sense that it's going to be rejected out of hand by particular groups, that's what we're reacting against. And we, like other individual citizens, would like to have complete religious freedom outside of that. Hand right there? Yep.
I was just wondering, Father Wiseman, if you could clarify the distinction between creationism and intelligent design, if they are, in fact, the same thing or two different ideas?
Okay. The creationism and intelligent design, are they exactly the same? I would